All right, guys, happy Wednesday. We're going to start in our small books today in our Latin and Greek roots, okay? What are Latin and Greek suffixes? First of all, let's put that in the top of our foldable here, Latin and Greek suffixes. This is our vocab. And our page number is 215. It says a suffix is a word part added to the end of a word to change its meaning. Some suffixes come from Latin, such as ment and able. Ment means the act or process of, and able means capable of. Others come from the Greek, such as ist, one who has a profession. So a microbiologist is the person who has a profession of studying microbiology. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and take in here, and then let's write for our definition. A suffix is it's a word part added to the end. Suffix come at the end of words. And they change the meaning. Of the word. And then let's add just a few of them in there. Meant. The act or process of. And able. Capable of. And then ist, our Greek one. One who has a profession. Who would really fit it in there. Okay? We want to look at a bunch more here. Here's your assignment coming out of your packet today, your Wednesday packet. You can start with your name. Let's check out the suffixes. We got able, we already had that one, capable of. Ation, acting, an action or a process. Ism, the act or state of, and ment, act or process of. So some of those are a little bit similar. Some come from the Greek, some come from the Latin. Here comes our assignment. It says use the information in the box above, this box, circle the words in each sentence below that have the Latin or the Greek suffixes. Write the meaning of the word on the line. You can use your dictionary if you have to. Okay, so first of all, we got to locate these words that end with one of these. He was the third president of the United States, but he might be best known for writing the Declaration of Independence. There's the Ation declaration, and Ation means act or process. So let's go ahead and put declaration here. And it's the act or process of stating. A declaration, you're stating something. And what are they stating? We are independent. That's what they were stating. Sometimes written words can be just as valuable. There it is, valuable. So go ahead and circle that, and that is capable of. And valuable obviously is worth something. So I'm going to put capable of having value or worth is its definition. Valuable. You have some valuable jewels. It's worth something. People liked the way he wrote about information from meetings while he was there. Information, there's my ation. And ation is the act or process of informing or telling. Jefferson wrote these words when the people had a lot of criticism for British law. Criticism, ism, the act or state of, and criticism is critical or being upset. The act or state of being upset. All right, so you got two left. I'll find them for you. Optimism and development. Yeah, development there. Those are the two. You got to come up with some definitions. Use the top to help you. Okay, that was a quick, short assignment because our story today is a little bit longer. You need your big reads now. With the leopard on the airplane. And I'm on page 240 when you see this ginormous picture of Abraham Lincoln. Our story genre this week is a biography, and we're going to get lots of information about Abe's honest words, the life of Abraham Lincoln. It's written by Doreen Rappaport, and it's illustrated by Kedar Nelson. In the slave state of Kentucky, deep in the wilderness, young Abraham learned to hunt for nuts and currants, that's a kind of berry, and fish for trout and bass, and tend the soil and seed. He learned sorrow at the age of 9 when his mama died. So Abraham Lincoln had a really super tough life, and one of the things that was tough was his mom died. But he found great joy with a loving stepmother who encouraged him to read and learn. Abraham Lincoln was my name, and with my pen I wrote the same. I wrote in both haste and speed and left it here for fools to read. Sounds like he's a little bit of a poet. The family moved deeper into the wilderness to a free state of Indiana. Panther screams and prowling bears filled Abraham's night with fear. He had just a mite of schooling, that's a little, yet he loved words the way his papa, a master storyteller, did. He stuffed books inside of his shirt. I think that's what he's doing here. In between splitting wood and plowing, he stood in the field and read. He read some books so many times he knew the whole parts by heart. Now, he didn't get to go to school because he lived so far out in the wilderness. Before people had settled the West, his dad had moved out there. The things I want to know are in books. My best friend is the man who will get me a book I ain't read. Boy, he sounds a lot like Nelson Mandela. You know, how do we get power? Power is found in learning, education, reading. Another move to New Salem, a village in Illinois. So now he moved north to Illinois. The long, lanky boy who was a man now. He ferried people and goods down the Ohio. He ferried people and goods down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. In between the pull of the pole and the splash of the water, he listened to hunters spin tall tales of mighty marksmen, half man, half alligator, and sailor describing giant mosquitoes that could kill a man. He heard lawyers tell of how they used words to gain justice for ordinary folks. He heard preachers quote from the Bible, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." That's going to come into one of his speeches later in life. He stored these different voices in his heart, and he vowed them. He wove them into his own words. The long, muddy Mississippi River brought Lincoln south to New Orleans. Now he's going to see something here that's going to just change his life forever. He walked on cobblestone paths and along canals, past flowers spilling over lacy iron balconies. He saw men and women in fancy clothes eating fancy food and sipping wine. French, Spanish, and English words filled his ears. But a hideous sight shattered his joy. 12 African Americans chained 6 and 6 together, strung together like so many fish upon a trout line. being separated forever from their children, their friends, their fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters, from their wives and children into perpetual slavery. Now, New Orleans, remember, we learned in social studies this week that it's a huge port city, and these slaves are coming in to the port city to be sold and divided from their families, and it shattered Lincoln. He was so very upset about this. Lincoln worked at many jobs: farmhand, store owner, postmaster, surveyor, rail splitter, whatever. He always had a book in his hand. Elocution, grammar, mathematics, biography, history, poetry, plays. Upon the subject of education, I view it as the most important subject which we as a people can be engaged. In other words, get your education. That's two famous people that told us that this week. America was growing. Farmers needed new waterways and railroads to ship their crops. Everyone needed better education. If he became a lawmaker, he could help people get these things. So he ran for the Illinois state legislature. He spoke in public squares and country stores and hayfields. I am young and unknown to many of you. I was born and have ever remained in the most humble walk of life. I have no wealthy or popular relations to recommend me. He lost. Nobody knew who he was yet. He lost, but people liked what he said and how he said it. In other words, he was good at speeches. He ran again. This time he won. He had run 3 more times and won. He became a lawyer. His clients praised honest old Abe, the lawyer who was never known to lie. He didn't like the nickname Abe, but it stuck. Resolve to be honest at all events, and you cannot be an honest lawyer. Resolve to be honest without being a lawyer. Choose some other occupation. So in other words, he says honesty is the best. I wonder if that wouldn't be something that we should continue to work on, honesty. Nearly 4 million black men, women, and children were enslaved in the southern states. Lincoln thought slavery was a great evil. If he became the United States Senator, more people would hear him speak out against it. In speech after speech, he reminded people that slavery did not fit with the ideals of the Declaration of Independence. It says all men should be created equal. As a nation, we began to declare that all men are created equal. We practically read it, all men are created equal, except for African Americans. And so he was really upset about this. And so he started giving speeches about it. Oh boy, check this out. That's the White House in the background. He lost the election, but again, his words got much attention. People felt he spoke from the heart. In the next 2 years, tension over slavery grew between the South and the North. Lincoln ran for president and spoke out against the evil practice. He won the election. But a month before he took office, 7 southern states left the Union. In other words, these states said, we're no longer part of the United States of America. We're going to make our own country. And why did they do this? Well, they were afraid that Lincoln was going to force them to get rid of slavery. They formed their own government with their own president. In his first inaugural address, Lincoln reminded Americans that they were one people. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Now, this is a good hint that he knew what was coming, and I think we know it's coming too. There it is. The first bombs that exploded when Americans started fighting Americans. On April 12th, 1861, Southern troops attacked Fort Sumter, a federal fort in South Carolina. So this was a fort that was in the South, and remember the South says, we're our own country. But the North said, okay, but Fort Sumter here, this is ours. And so, well, the South said, no, it's not, and they started bombing it. Lincoln knew he had no choice now. The North had to fight the South to bring it back into the Union. I hold the union of these states is perpetual. No state can lawfully get out of the Union. Families were torn apart as husbands, fathers, and sons went off to war. Many never to return. Remember, in our social studies book, we learned that over 300,000 Americans died in that war. Many Northerners worried that Lincoln did not have the skills to lead the nation in this terrible time. He's too backwoods. Remember, he never had any formal education. He's unpresidential. He tells too many silly jokes. He has too little experience in government. If I were tried to read, much less answer, all the attacks made on me, this shop might as well be closed. For any other business, I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep doing so until the end. In other words, stop messing around with me. I'm doing a good job. Lincoln believed that true liberty could not permit slavery. He decided to use his wartime powers as commander-in-chief to end slavery. In the third year of the war, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. It freed over 3 million black men, women, and children, and called for the black men to join the Union Army. In giving freedom to the slaves, we assure freedom to the free. Most white Northerners opposed Lincoln's proclamation, but he stood firm. So now even the people in the North are mad at him, but he was doing what was right. I never in my life felt more certain that I was doing right than I do in signing this paper. My whole soul's in it, and boom, check it out. I know we talked about it in social studies the other day, but it's the turning of the war when these freed slaves come and be part of the battle. The war dragged on, and Lincoln grew sadder and sadder as more Americans died. He went to the Gettysburg battlefield, and he again reminded the nation of why these men had sacrificed their life. Here's his speech. 407 years ago, our fathers brought 4 is 20 years. So 4 times 20 is 87 years ago. Our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. The Emancipation Proclamation had freed slaves only in the states and territories that were in rebellion. Lincoln wanted slavery ended in the entire nation. Most white lawmakers did not want this. He called them to the White House to convince them of what he knew was right. The moment came when I felt that slavery must die, that a nation might live. Finally, they agreed. In the 4th year of the war, victory seemed close for the North, but Lincoln felt no joy. Hundreds of thousands of men on both sides had died in battle. The country was deeply divided. Many Northerners wanted to punish the South for starting the war. Southerners were furious that the Union Army had destroyed their cities and their homes and their crops. Could the nation ever be one people again? In his second inaugural address, that means they elected him president again, Lincoln shared his vision of how the country could heal itself. With malice towards none, that means you can't be upset with anybody. With charity for all, that means be kind and loving to everybody. With firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wound. The South finally surrendered. The job of healing the nation began, but Lincoln was not there to help. An assassin's bullet ended his life. Now, he actually was at a movie theater, like watching a play, and this man snuck in and shot him. But his words were there to guide those who chose to remember. It is for us the living, rather than we here, highly resolved, that these dead shall not have died in vain, but this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. That was the end of the story. Some of Lincoln's famous words. Lincoln, a president that had led us through a very, very, very tough time in the history of our country, a civil war, and the abolishment of slavery.